They say raising a child is like teaching your own heart how to walk outside your body. And one day, if you're not careful, that heart turns around and tells you you're the reason it's ashamed. That's the day I stopped breathing the same way. Studio Microphone, welcome to my channel, friends. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next story, true, emotional tales that remind us what family, respect, and forgiveness really mean. It happened on a gray Sunday morning. I was in the garage, hands black with grease, fixing the old truck I'd owned since before my son, Ryan, was born. The same truck that carried him to his first day of school. The same one we used to wash together when he was 8, spraying each other with the hose, laughing like fools. Now, at 21, he stood in the driveway, wearing his college sweatshirt, arms crossed, phone in hand, face full of something colder than the weather. "Dad," he said, "can't you get rid of that thing? It's embarrassing." I froze mid-turn. Embarrassing? He rolled his eyes. "Everyone at school thinks you still live like it's 1980. You show up in that truck, in that jacket, it's just people talk, okay? People talk. The same people who never sat up nights balancing bills so he could stay in that college. The same people whose opinions he valued more than the calloused hands that built his life." I wiped my hands on a rag, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "So you're embarrassed of me now?" He sighed. "Dad, it's not like that. I don't want you showing up at the university like what? Like someone who doesn't belong there." The silence between us was heavy. Even the wind stopped long enough to listen. I looked at him, my son, my pride, my reason, and for the first time, I saw distance instead of reflection. The same mouth that once called me hero now said I didn't belong. "All right," I said quietly. "If that's what you want, I'll stay away." He frowned, maybe realizing how that sounded. "Dad, don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said. "I just don't want to embarrass you anymore." That night I couldn't eat. The plate stayed untouched while I stared at the family photo on the wall, Ryan, age 10, sitting on my shoulders, both of us covered in mud after fixing that same truck. He'd called it our beast. Now it was just that thing. My wife had passed when Ryan was 14. Since then, every dream I'd had was his. Every dollar I saved, every double shift I worked, every missed meal, all that was for that boy. He never knew the full story of how he got into college, how the bills got paid on time. He just thought life somehow worked itself out. Maybe that was my fault. I made it look easy. I wanted him to focus on his future, not worry about the cost of it. But maybe in protecting him from the truth, I'd protected him from gratitude too. Later that night, I walked into the garage again. The smell of motor oil and rain mixed in the air. I ran my hand along the hood of the truck, cold, scarred, familiar. "You carried us a long way, old friend," I whispered. "Guess he's forgotten what you mean." In the quiet hum of the night, I made a promise, not of anger, not of revenge, but of lesson. He didn't need to be told who I was. He needed to learn it, and soon he would. A few days passed. Ryan didn't call, didn't text. I didn't either. Sometimes silence is the only language that says what words can't. But one evening as I was closing the garage, my phone buzzed, his name on the screen. "Hey, Dad," he said casually, like nothing had happened. "I need a favor." Of course he did. He wanted me to transfer his next semester's tuition. I paused for a moment, then asked, "Didn't you get your scholarship check?" He hesitated. "It didn't go through yet. They said some paperwork thing. I'll pay you back when it does." I smiled faintly. "Sure, son. I'll handle it." He never knew that scholarship ended 2 years ago. He never knew I'd been paying every cent from the overtime shifts at the machine shop. And he didn't need to, not yet. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open, the same one where I tracked every payment, every loan, every sacrifice. The total stared back at me like a mirror of years gone. I whispered to myself, "He'll learn the value when it's time." Then I wrote a date at the bottom of the page. Graduation day. Months went by. Ryan stopped visiting home altogether. He was busy with projects, friends, and a new life. He posted photos of dinners, parties, expensive clothes. Not once did he mention where the money came from. And yet, every time the tuition notice hit my email, I paid it quietly without delay. Because that's what fathers do. We don't buy pride, we build futures. One afternoon, my coworker Dave at the shop caught me staring at the tuition invoice. He laughed softly. Still paying for the kid? I nodded. He's almost done. One more semester. Dave leaned back. You ever tell him where it's all coming from? I shook my head. Nah, some lessons shouldn't be spoken. They should be lived. He smiled. You're a better man than most. I looked out the window. Maybe. Or maybe I just remember what it's like to be young and blind to love. Weeks turned into months. The day of Ryan's graduation finally came. He hadn't invited me. I found out through a photo online, him in a black gown, standing with his friends, caption reading, couldn't have done it without the support of my amazing scholarship program. My chest tightened, but not from anger, from a quiet, aching pride. He'd made it, even if he didn't see me standing behind the curtain, clapping quietly from the shadows. That night, I took one last envelope from the drawer, the final payment receipt. And beneath it, the letter I'd written weeks ago. It said only one thing. You may not know who paid for your dreams, son, but one day you will. And when you do, I hope you'll understand that love never needed to be proud, it just needed to be enough. The next day, I mailed the envelope, not to him, but to the university's financial office with his name and student ID. Inside was a note asking for a simple favor. Please send a printed tuition summary to the student's registered email, include the payer's details. And then I waited, not out of spite, but because truth doesn't need a stage. It just needs the right moment to walk in. It was a Thursday morning, ordinary, quiet, almost too peaceful. I was having my coffee, same chipped mug, same chair by the window. The old clock on the wall ticked like it had all my life, steady, patient, unbothered by the noise of the world. Then my phone buzzed. Not a call, an email notification. The sender's name made me pause. Ryan Hale. I opened it slowly. Dad, I got a statement from the university today. It said, every semester's tuition was paid under your name. Is that true? For a moment, I just sat there, eyes fixed on the screen, coffee cooling in my hand. Then another line came through, almost immediately. Why didn't you tell me? I leaned back, staring out the window, letting the question echo in the silence. Why didn't I tell him? Because sometimes, son, love hides itself not to be unseen, but to be understood when you're ready. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I closed the email and whispered he found out. That afternoon, as I was locking up the garage, I saw his car pull up. Sleek, shiny, loud, the kind of car I never could afford. He stepped out slowly, still in his crisp shirt and tailored jacket, but his eyes, they were different. Not cold anymore. Just lost. Dad, he said quietly. Ryan. He looked around the driveway, like he was seeing it for the first time, the oil stains, the old truck, the half-fixed tools, all the things he'd once called embarrassing. He took a deep breath. You paid for everything, didn't you? I nodded. I did. Why? Because I promised your mother I would. His face softened at her name. He hadn't spoken of her in years. I continued, she wanted to see you graduate. Wanted you to have the kind of chance we never had. That's all this was, a promise kept. He blinked hard, trying to hold back whatever storm was building inside him. I thought the scholarship. There was no scholarship, Ryan. It ended halfway through sophomore year. His mouth parted. So, the late nights, the extra shifts, all for you. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. He stood there, shoulders sinking, every ounce of arrogance melting into guilt. I'm sorry, Dad. I smiled faintly. Don't be. You were just living in a world that forgot to teach gratitude. It's not your fault. He shook his head. No, it is. I said things I can't take back. Then don't take them back, I said softly. Replace them with better ones. He followed me into the garage, watching as I worked. For the first time in years, he didn't flinch at the smell of oil or the dust on the shelves. Instead, he picked up a wrench and asked quietly, "Where do I start?" I looked at him, heart tightening with something between pride and relief. Start with that bolt right there. I said, "It's been loose for a while." As he knelt beside me, the sound of metal clicked softly, familiar, rhythmic, almost like old laughter echoing back. It wasn't much, but it was something. And sometimes something is all a broken bond needs to start healing again. That evening, as the sun fell behind the horizon, I saw him sitting on the porch, the same spot his mother used to love. He looked small again, young, not by age but by truth. When I stepped outside, he said without looking up, "I don't deserve how much you've done for me." I sat beside him. Deserves a word people use when they start counting love like money. I never did. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Dad, I don't want to be the kind of man who forgets who built his road." "Then don't," I said. "Remember where it started. Right here, in Greece and hard work." He smiled for the first time in months, and just like that, the distance between us felt smaller again. The next few days, Ryan kept showing up. Not with demands, not with excuses, just presence. Sometimes he'd help me in the garage. Sometimes he'd just sit on the porch in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was healing, the kind of silence that says, "I'm here now," instead of "I'm sorry." One evening, he came by holding 2 cups of coffee. I looked up from under the truck, surprised. He smiled sheepishly. "You like yours black, right?" "Still do." He handed me the cup, careful not to spill. Thought maybe I could help fix the wiring. "I've been watching videos." I chuckled. "Careful, or you'll end up loving this life." He smirked. "Maybe I already do." We worked side by side until the light faded. Then he sat back, wiping his hands with an old rag. "Same way I used to." After a long pause, he said softly, "I used to think success was about never getting dirty." I looked at him. "And now, I think it's about who you get dirty for." Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. The boy who once feared being seen with me was finally seeing me. A few nights later, he invited me to dinner, his place this time. When I arrived, the table was already set, simple but warm. My favorite meal, even down to the cheap mustard I always used. "Dad," he said, sitting across from me, "I've been thinking about all the things I missed while trying to impress everyone else." I waited. I missed birthdays, dinners, weekends. I missed you. I missed home. I smiled faintly. "Home's still here. Always will be." He nodded, eyes softening. "I don't want your silence to be my memory of you." That line hit harder than I expected. For years, silence was how I protected him. But maybe now it was time to speak. "Ryan," I said, "I never cared about being proud. I cared about you finding your way, even if it meant walking past me for a while." He swallowed hard. "I walked too far." "Yeah," I said, "but you turned around. That's what matters." After dinner, he pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Something you won't expect," he said. Inside was a check, the amount roughly equal to the total tuition. I looked at him, stunned. "It's everything I've saved from work. I can't ever repay what you did, but I can start." I shook my head slowly. "Son, love isn't a loan." "I know," he said, "but this isn't payment. It's respect." For the first time in years, I didn't argue. I just nodded and said, "Then I'll accept it, not for me, but for the man you're becoming." He smiled, a real one, not for photos or pride. When I left his apartment, the night air was cold, but my heart felt warm. I sat in my truck, looked at the reflection of the dashboard light on the windshield, and whispered, "He learned." Not because I lectured him, not because life punished him, but because truth finally had a place to sit beside him. The next morning, I found a text waiting for me. "Dad, I was embarrassed before because I didn't understand you. Now I'm proud because I finally do." I stared at it for a long while before replying. "That's all a father ever wants, son." Then I put my phone down, opened the garage door, and watched the sunlight spill across the old truck, shining on its scars, making them look like medals. Some people spend their lives chasing perfection. I'd found my peace in imperfection because it had a name, a heartbeat, and finally, understanding. It was a Saturday morning when the letter arrived, plain white envelope, no return address. just my name written in Ryan's handwriting. Inside was an invitation. Guest of Honor, University Business Alumni Gala. And beneath that, in smaller letters, special recognition, Ryan Hale, Graduate of the Year. At first, I almost laughed. Me? Guest of honor? After all the years, he didn't even want me near the campus? But there it was, printed in black and gold, his request. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror, buttoning up my old gray suit. The same one I wore to his mother's funeral. The fabric was worn, but it still fit. Maybe that was life's way of saying some things don't change, they just grow softer with time. As I drove toward the university, the city lights blurred through the windshield, small, quiet stars that didn't need to shine brighter to be seen. I parked the old truck near the entrance, smiled at the familiar rumble of its engine, and whispered, "One last trip, old friend." The auditorium was glowing, soft music, polished shoes, people holding glasses of wine, and importance. For a moment, I almost turned back. Then I heard his voice. "Dad." He was standing by the stage, dressed sharp, confident, but this time his confidence didn't look hollow. It looked earned. He walked up, hugged me tight, and said quietly, "I'm really glad you came." I nodded, still trying to process the crowd, the lights, the looks. "I wouldn't miss it," I said. When the ceremony began, they went through the usual speeches, donors, professors, sponsors. Then the host said, "Now, our graduate of the year, Ryan Hale, would like to say a few words." I leaned back, not expecting much, but the moment he reached the podium, I saw his hands tremble slightly. He took a deep breath, looked out at the sea of faces, then at me. He smiled faintly. "I wasn't always proud of where I came from," he began. "I used to think success meant leaving things behind, old homes, old habits, even old people." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd, but his tone stayed steady. I was wrong. Because behind every success story is someone who worked quietly, without applause, without credit, someone who believed when nobody else did. He paused. Mine was my father. The hall went silent. Every sound disappeared, every face turned toward me. He continued, voice thick with emotion. He fixed engines by day and built my future by night. He paid for every class I took. Every late-night study session was powered by his overtime shifts, and I called him embarrassing. The crowd murmured softly, moved. He looked right at me. "Dad, I'm not embarrassed anymore. I'm grateful. Because you taught me that dignity doesn't need to shout. It just works until the world learns to listen." My throat tightened. I could barely see him through the blur of tears. He stepped down from the stage, walked straight to me, and said, "This award isn't mine. It's ours." He held it out, gold plaque shining softly in the light. When I took it, the whole room stood and clapped, but I didn't hear applause. All I heard was my wife's voice in my head, whispering, "He finally knows." That night after the ceremony, we stood outside under the stars. Ryan laughed quietly, wiping his eyes. "Guess I finally made you proud, huh?" I smiled. "You always did, son. You just didn't know it." He exhaled, looking up at the sky. "I miss Mom." "She's here," I said softly. "She just wanted to hear you say thank you." He chuckled, voice breaking. "Then I hope she was listening." "She always is." The morning after the ceremony, the house felt different. Not bigger, not smaller, just quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore. The kind that breathes. I poured 2 cups of coffee like I used to when his mother was still here. One for me, one that I left by her picture on the table. The sunlight crept across the floorboards, touching the framed award that now sat beneath her photo. It read, "In honor of dedication, sacrifice, and unseen love." I smiled softly. "Looks like he finally got it," I whispered. Later that day, Ryan stopped by. No grand entrance this time. No car revving, no loud music. Just the sound of his footsteps, steady, respectful, home. He walked in holding a small box. "Dad," he said, "I've got something for you." Inside was a set of brand new tools, polished, gleaming, perfect replacements for the old rusted ones I'd used for decades. "I don't need these," I said, quietly. He grinned. "I know, but you deserve them." I ran a thumb over the metal. Guess you learned the difference between price and value. He nodded, eyes glistening. From the best teacher I ever had. We spent the rest of the afternoon fixing the porch railing together. No talking, no explaining. Just laughter here and there. The creak of wood, the smell of sunlight and oil. And somewhere between the hammer strikes and the shared silences, I realized this was what healing really looked like. Not an apology, just presence. At one point, Ryan looked up and said, "Dad, you know that truck of yours?" "Yeah. I took it to a mechanic last week. Had it restored." I turned to him, startled. "You did what?" He smiled. "I figured the man who carried me all these years deserved his ride to shine again." We walked to the driveway, and there it was, the same old truck, now gleaming in the sun, paint smooth, chrome polished like new. But the license plate, that's what made my heart stop. It read, "Dad's Pride." I laughed through the lump in my throat. "You're trying to make an old man cry, huh?" Ryan chuckled softly. "No, Dad. Just trying to make up for the times I didn't look close enough." That evening, as the sun dipped low, he sat beside me on the porch, 2 cups of coffee between us. The same way his mother and I used to sit years ago. Quiet, content, no words needed. He said softly, "You know, I always thought you worked too hard because you had no choice. And now, I know you worked hard because you loved too much." I looked at him smiling. That's a good thing to know before life teaches it the hard way. He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "I'll never forget again, Dad. Not the work, not the love, not the man who built it all." I reached over, squeezed his shoulder. "Then I've done my job." As night fell, the wind carried a faint sound through the porch, the chime that used to hang near the door. It swayed gently, singing that same soft tune it did when his mother was still alive. Ryan looked up. "Is that—" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "She's here too." We sat there until the stars began to bloom. No past, no regret, just 2 men who finally understood each other. When he left, I stayed a while longer, staring at the truck under the porch light. It wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a history lesson written in metal, grease, and love. I took one slow breath, looked at the sky, and whispered, "He's ready now, love. He finally knows." Then I turned off the porch light, closed the door, and let the night settle around me like peace I'd been waiting a lifetime to earn.